We're going to begin with former CIA Director John Brennan, who, in addition to serving as Homeland Security Advisor to President Obama, spent 25 years at the CIA under both Democratic and Republican administrations. Welcome. Let's start with reports that the White House asked the chairman of the two intelligence committees to knock back reports about an investigation into Russian efforts to collude with the Trump campaign in the election. How does that strike you? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I certainly don't know the content of the conversations that they had with the media. And I have tremendous respect for Senator Burr, who is the chairman of the Senate committee, which is going to be undertaking this investigation. And I do think it's very important that that investigation be done in a bipartisan fashion. If it's only one party that's going to be leading this, it is not going to deliver the results that the American people need and deserve. So I do hope that they're very conscious of the fact that not just the concern about the content of a discussion that they might have had with the media, but also the appearance of any impropriety. But again, I think Chairman Burr recognizes his responsibilities, and along with Vice Chairman Warner, I really do hope that they pursue this investigation with vigor and with the appropriate amount of bipartisan support that it needs.
The White House also said that they talked to FBI Director Comey about the investigation going on, and that Comey told them or that the FBI told the White House there was nothing to these stories about Russians contacting Trump administration officials. Do you think, James Comey, the director of the FBI, do you think he would have weighed in on what was happening with an ongoing investigation?
I have tremendous respect for Jim Comey's competence and integrity. And it's been my experience working with Jim that he wouldn't do anything that was going to in any way compromise the integrity of an ongoing investigation. And that's why anybody who claims that the facts are already known in terms of what did or didn't happen between Russian officials and U.S. persons during the election, I think is speaking very prematurely. But the White House needs to understand that the interaction with the FBI on criminal investigations is something that really they need to steer clear of. Certainly when I was in the White House for 4 years and then at the CIA, any type of engagement between the White House and the FBI about an ongoing criminal investigation was verboten. Again, not just because of the impropriety of doing it, but the appearance that it would provide to folks on the outside that there might be some unwarranted interference in such an investigation.
So this is not regular business. This wouldn't have had, when you were serving, the White House ever called you and said, hey, would you help us out here? We got a story. We need some, talk to some reporters.
No, I never did that on behalf of the White House request, and the White House never made a request of me in that regard, particularly if it's an investigation that, by implication, deals with some individuals who might have been associated with the individuals that currently reside in the White House.
We talked to House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes last week, and I want to play something that he said and get your reaction to it.
What we have is we do have people in the last administration, people who have burrowed in, perhaps all throughout the government, who clearly are leaking to the press.
So what's your reaction to that? We were talking about leaks of sensitive information from Obama administration officials.
Well, I think it's very unhelpful to make allegations about who is responsible for these leaks. And I think we have to distinguish between leaks of classified information, which is against the law, and leaks of discussions that might be taking place within the administration. And as far as leaks of classified information are concerned, I agree that they're appalling and they need to be investigated. They need to stop because the impact on our collection systems and our capabilities can be grave. So I do think it's important to be able to stop those leaks. But the information could be coming from any number of quarters, whether it be intelligence community, White House, Congress, because a lot of people have access to this information.
One of the things that Chairman Nunes said is that, particularly with respect to National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, he said there's no way anybody would know about phone conversations he had with the Russian ambassador unless they were at the very highest levels of a previous administration, and that's why he was pointing to previous administration officials. Does that make sense to you?
Well, again, until there's an investigation in terms of who had access to this information, how it might have been shared beyond the senior-most circle of individuals, I do think it is premature to be pointing fingers at anybody, whether in this administration or the previous administration, who may have been responsible for those leaks.
I want to switch to the topic of President Trump's travel ban. There is a report that the Department of Homeland Security, that intelligence from the department says that the travel ban really won't solve a big problem, that these 7 countries aren't responsible for. Now, it's not the full report, but give me your sense of how an administration assesses this kind of information as it comes in? Is it the president takes it in and then he can do what he wants? Does he have to live by it? How should people think about this in this report?
Well, the Department of Homeland Security has the responsibility for providing the assessments and insights into how best to protect this country from individuals who may be coming from overseas, in concert with the CIA and FBI and other elements of the intelligence community. I do think that report puts its finger on it by saying that citizenship is not the indicator of potential terrorist action. There are a lot of factors that go into it. So individuals might have traveled from their country of birth, might have had different experiences, might have associated with certain elements that lent themselves then to terrorist activities. So the vetting process that needs to go on has to take into account multiple factors, not just countries of origin or where they might be departing from.
The Trump administration would say, though, these countries were targeted by the Obama administration in terms of their being the birthplace of terrorism, and some of them are on the terrorist watch list. Why not be vigilant about them?
Oh, and we need to be vigilant about them, but that doesn't mean that there needs to be this temporary ban on individuals who are arriving from those countries. And so during the Obama administration, yes, we looked very carefully at what was happening in those countries and how we could ensure that we would take the steps to protect this country from having individuals arrive here on our shores that might have nefarious purposes.
If you were advising the president right now about the threats to the homeland, where would you put the travel ban in the rank order? And if it's not number one, what would you put ahead of it?
I don't think the travel ban is going to help in any significant way. What they need to do is to, again, take into account all the various means that terrorist groups use to try to carry out attacks here in the homeland. And the cyber domain is the area where most of the terrorist groups now are operating in a very freewheeling fashion. And so the efforts to incite and to encourage and to recruit via that cyber domain is something that the FBI and the intelligence agencies are very, very vigilant about. So it may sound good to have a ban against individuals coming from certain countries, but you really need to take a look at what is truly going to mitigate the nature of and the scope of the terrorist threat that we face.
Is there a downside to the ban?
Well, yes, I think first of all, it sends a very bad message to individuals that are being singled out because of their nationality. It also gives a clear impression that there is an effort on the part of this administration to focus on Muslims themselves. So I think it is subject to various interpretations that do not help our national security.
You know, you're here speaking to us on the record, but I should ask you, have you talked to anybody in the press since leaving?
No, I have not. You're the first one that I've talked to in the press.
Meaning on, off the record, or any of that?
That's correct, yes.
Let's go to North Korea.
Which is why, as people point fingers about leaks, I certainly welcome that investigation to stop those leaks because they shouldn't be taking place, and anybody who thinks I'm responsible for that is dead wrong.
If you were still director of the CIA, what would keep you up at night?
Oh, there are many things that used to keep me up at night. From the standpoint of what is it that we need to do in order to prevent proliferators from achieving their aims, from terrorist groups, cyber, but also Russia, what they might be looking at in terms of their next area for exploitation, what they did across the board on elections. So one of the things that the intelligence community and law enforcement agencies have to do now is to deal with simultaneous issues with great consequence to our national security.
Should Russia be monitored? What are they going to do next, or should they be confronted?
I think it has to be a little bit of both. Certainly the Russians have an agenda when it comes to trying to exert their influence in different parts of the world. We see what they did in Ukraine, we see what they did in Syria, and also here in our elections. They look at the European landscape also as ripe for exploitation in terms of trying to have individuals who are sympathetic to Russia's agenda be elected.
President Trump is very focused on North Korea. We've had this reports about that VX nerve gas was used to kill the half-brother of the leader of North Korea. What does that say to you about that assassination attempt and where North Korea is?
Well, it says a couple things. One is that Kim Jong-un continues to use lethal means to eliminate either opponents of his regime internally or those who he just disagrees with. There's been brutal repression inside of North Korea over the last number of years under Kim Jong-un's leadership. He has killed many, many individuals in some of the most brutal means possible. The use of this VX against his half-brother, certainly all indicators point to North Korean responsibility for this, is another example of his use of these types of toxins to carry out his objectives.
H.R. McMaster's, the new National Security Advisor, has reportedly said that the phrase radical Islamic terrorism should be avoided. President Trump has said if you don't use that term, you don't adequately understand the nature of the threat out there. Where do you come down in that debate?
General McMaster has a stellar reputation, not just as a military officer and leader, but as a very, very thoughtful national security specialist. And I think he recognizes that these bumper sticker terms like radical Islam being responsible for terrorism does more harm than good, need to be precise. And it's one of the things that I think the president needs to realize is that when he uses language, it has resonance around the world, not just with his constituent base here in the United States. So being much more disciplined in terms of the language that we use, I think, is something that is going to help our national security. And General McMaster, in his early days, saying that that is an unhelpful phrase, gives me even greater confidence that he is going to do what he needs to do as National Security Advisor, and hopefully be able to sway the thoughts and ideas and inclinations of some of the individuals who work with him in the White House complex.
All right, Mr. Brennan, thank you so much for being with us. We are out of time.